welcome back. This one's about Grey Gardens. Grey Gardens. As you can see, the picture in that matches up. Criterion release. You get quite a lot of nice stuff in this. You get a commentary. You get another documentary beyond Grey Gardens called about the Beales of Grey Gardens, which is another hour and a half long commentary. And you get introductions, you get interviews. So you get a bunch of stuff, trailers. So you get a lot of good stuff in this. I'm just going to talk about the film itself. So it's an easily to find film. You can also just find it on YouTube if you're looking for it on YouTube. What it's about, it's a documentary made by the Maysles brother in the mid-70s. They found out about these two women who lived in basically in one of those suburban areas of New York where all the rich go, and these two women, one in her late 70s, one in her 50s, the mother and daughter, both called Edith Beale. Basically the same name, one was Big Edith and one was Little Edith. That was what they were known by, and they were both living in. They both ran out of money. They had a big house, but they'd no one to garden, no one to keep up the house. They didn't have the money for that. And as you go through the film, you see their lives, you see how destitute they are, and what led them to it. But it's not an obvious documentary because that would be boring. What it is you show them as they live their lives one summer, really. I mean, the photograph up here was set in the winter, but that's rare, really, in this film. Most of it's set during the summer as they swan about the house trying to renovate it because they've had a public order against them. Either have to renovate the house and get it back up to snuff, or they get thrown out the house, basically. So they managed to get money from the relatives to do the house back up. Now, the thing about them is one of their names are Bouvier, which is Jackie Kennedy's name, because they're cousins of Jackie Kennedy, and her family end up having to put money into this thing. So this is what actually happens to people who come from a rich family but don't have the money. Like the sons of this pair of Big Edith were lawyers or journalists and things, so they're doing well, but Little Edith was a socialite who never really took advantage of her situation and may have been a bit spoiled, and her mother may have been not realistic about her expectations of people. And what you get is two people who are kind of very artsy, but who just never really fit into life. They never could get together. They didn't understand life as the rest of the world understood it. They came from rich families. They didn't understand poorness because they always had money. And then when they didn't have money, they couldn't really cope. They had to rely on people to help them out. So this kind of shows you what happens with people who hear about all these rich families, but you never actually hear about the ones who come from rich families but who struggle because they're not the ones with the skills to make the money or take advantage of their connections. They're the ones who are the hangers-on. They're the ones that annoy the richer version of the family who they have to put up with, basically. These are those people. But it doesn't judge these two. It actually just looks at the situation, what's happened to them and how they try and survive. And what you get is a film that's sympathetic, but it lets you fill in the gaps yourself of what's going on. Because during the time Big Edith and Little Edith both talk to the camera, or they're basically talking to the Maysles brothers who are listening, but they've got a camera, so they're filming, but they're also responding as people to the person talking. I mean, I've shot stuff where I'm the invisible person in the room, but you get nods, you get interactions with people sometimes, and it's fine. It's just the way it goes sometimes. There's only so much you can be invisible. So this film doesn't push the brothers because they're shooting the footage. It doesn't push them forward, but they are people within landscape, and they don't try and take that out of the film, which makes it much better, much stronger. It's showing you the film's being directed, but also shows you they're not trying to push anything with the film. You just try to see these two women as they are and who they are. And what you have by the time this film comes out is Big Edith is an old woman who's near death, basically. She's not doing well. She's living in a house that's fallen apart. It's probably very cold in the winter. She doesn't really have the strength now. She's in bed most of the time, and little Edith is the one who's taking care of her. Little Edith can barely take care of herself. She's delusional. I mean, basically delusional about the past, about the present, about who she is, really, and what her life is. She doesn't have any hair. She's just apparently she got a disease that took her hair fall out. But there's another story where she burnt her hair off. No one's quite sure. It doesn't really define in this film. All you know is, first you're watching, what's up? She's always wearing stuff over her head, and you wonder what's going on there. And eventually you start to see little tufts of grey hair, but not much. And you can notice that she doesn't have hair. You can see through the stuff she's wearing, you can see there's the skull. So obviously she was once a beautiful woman, once a socialite, but now she never married. Now, did she want to marry and didn't get anywhere, or does she never want to marry? Because there's a feeling of her, she never really wanted to marry in the first place. She's used to be the centre of attention. She wants to be centre of attention. She really needs the attention. That's a problem. There's a kind of craziness to her that's just there on the screen. You're not quite sure if it's come out because of all the problems she's had in her life, have kind of lost the money and lost her hair, and it's just come out and it's become more bitter over time, or was always there. Because you get a feeling there was something there in her all the time that developed over time to be a little more crazy. But you can never quite tell. You don't know how people evolve over time, but you do get the feeling that she was very self-involved, and she didn't want to settle for mediocrity, and she got bored with people pretty quickly. She wanted to marry an artist or someone who was, important in the arts, and rather than marrying someone who was just a business person, a boring business person. And that wasn't realistic in her society, really. That was not really something that would really happen well and basically get her a life that would have any money, basically. So she was stuck between two worlds, and she never really managed to work out where she wanted to go. And then she's basically aged out, and then she lost her hair, and she was trapped back within her family. And her mother was happy to take her back because her mother had lost her husband who had left her. And he obviously was not going to care for the family. He was just going to find a way to get divorced and move on and leave them to fend for themselves. So they both have a tragic life. I'd be feeling both of them destroy each other's relationship with people outside. Anyone who comes from the outside, both of them are scared of being left alone, so they will destroy the other person's relationships with people out of jealousy. But little Edith always wants to leave. She's dying to leave, but she can't leave because she's scared. She's terrified of leaving, but she won't admit it. And Big Edith is just basically waiting to die in that house as it falls apart around her. What's really interesting in the film is all this comes out over time. There's no big narrative to it. It's just watching these people go around the house and talking to each other, and you find out information as they go. But it's very well paced. You're always interested to know what's going to happen, how they're going to react, because they're obviously so eccentric and so interesting that you're fascinated to watch them and see what happens. But you do get a sense as there's kindness there, but there's also selfishness. They are who they are, and there's things found out in detail you might not like, but that's how it goes. There's madness as well. These two are not entirely sane. And what this brings out is something that's always hinted upon with films and horror movies like Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the madness of being left behind. Like if in Psycho you see these, you basically have Norman Bates with his mother, they've been left behind by the world, and don't have each other. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's a family's been left behind. And this is like a exploration of what it's like to be left behind in real life. It's just like, there's no melodramatic murders. All there is basically madness slowly over the years as everything crumbles, everything collapses. It just happens very slowly. And it's much more tragic. There's no melodramatic way out, it's just something that keeps on going and rots away the house, the way it rots away the soul. And you see these people basically losing their minds slowly over time. Like the house gets so decrepit because little Edith might be cleaning it up and she never did because she was so into her vanity and her fantasies. But she was just losing her mind slowly but surely over time. She just wasn't good at housekeeping and doing all that stuff, just wasn't into that. Which shows you she was never really interested in getting married. Not in a conventional sense. She was into the arts. So that's kind of, you start to see the seeds of the tragedy. You also see the seeds of the tragedy that's happening all throughout societies, where the members of societies become like this, who become spoiled and become, find it hard to live in the world. And you also see what happens, as areas become poor, as people are just left behind and no one is funds them to survive or learn new skills. They're just forgotten, just left to rot. So it is a really terrific film about the tragedy of what happens to those left behind. What do they have to look forward to, which is really kind of nothing. It's just like slowly dying in America. That's it. That's all they've got. And do you go mad or you keep fighting on? What's your options? It's just there's no real options. You're just doomed, basically. And it's a film about the people who have been left behind who are doomed. And it's a wonderful film, but it's really terrific and really moving, so I'd highly recommend you watch it. But don't expect a high narrative film. It's about a film about two characters who are driving each other slowly insane, and who are very delusional. So you have to be aware of that before you go into it. But it's an hour and a half long, so it's not that long a film. So you shouldn't have any real problems figuring it out. So I'd highly recommend it. Go see it. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll be back soon. Right, bye for now.